business of interactive entertainment, market forces shaping the transmedia leader. Please welcome Yoshio Osaki, President and CEO of IDG Intelligence.
Hello. It's good to see everybody here. My name is Yoshio Osaki, President and CEO of IDG Intelligence. And as you guys saw with Andrew Wilson and with Strauss, these are partners of ours that we've worked with for over 20 years, me personally, with EA and Take-Two. And they gave you an inside view, the C-suite point of view on what's happening and what's the trends that are reshaping this market. I come at it from a very different perspective. This is going to be the data nerd section for the entire conference. And the idea here, yeah, I know, right? Let's go. As the financial keynote, I'm going to be throwing a lot of data at you guys. I know it's a little early in the morning. Some of you guys might have been up a little late last night. But this is what gets me going. This is what lights me up. Every day I'm learning new stuff, even though I've been in this space for 22 years. So I'm going to share a lot of the most recent learnings that I've had with a front row seat to all of the evolutions and revolutions in the games market over the last 20 plus years, and also in the last 22 months. And having advised a lot of the major leaders in gaming and also non-endemics coming into gaming, this is going to be a very valuable session in terms of framing where the opportunities are in a market that's going through a significant transformation. And when we're looking at those headwinds, we have to be very selective about what the opportunities mean for each of us in this room. And I come before you as somebody who's advised 300 clients across 56 countries. And so our perspective is very balanced because we've seen everything from a startup, an indie studio, with 2 or 3 folks in a garage trying to make something happen, all the way up to AAA, studios, publishers, platforms, entertainment and media companies, big tech, as well as the biggest investment firms on Wall Street. And so for us, what we're finding is that gaming is a fulcrum through which a lot of technology and transmedia trends are revolving around today. But while we're talking about gaming, just like other sectors in this industry right now, there is a big transition taking place. And there are 5 forces that are redefining gaming over the next decade. Firstly, AI, and Strauss and Andrew both talked about it very intelligently. What we're seeing there at IDG, it's transforming game development and publishing in a few specific use case areas right now. The first, AI-assisted asset generation. We're seeing faster prototyping and concepting. Now, you need sometimes 30 or 40 ideas before you get to the right one. So AI is more derivative, but it can help to speed up that throughput at the top of the funnel. We're also seeing dynamic NPC behaviors. Smaller teams building larger worlds. So for us at IDG, we're learning more about the best practices, but also realizing in some cases it might be a cost reducer, but for the AAAs, and Strauss touched on it pretty eloquently, if you're Rockstar and you use Gen AI technology, you're not pocketing those savings. You're reinvesting those savings in making the game bigger and better with more content than before. Second, economics of AAA. Is the model broken? The truth is, for a lot of publishers and studios, the answer is yes. It's not working. We know this. You look at the P&Ls, $200 million dev budgets all the way up to $1 billion plus. Marketing budgets also growing commensurately. And so when we're looking at this market, it's not serving everybody equally anymore. So you have to find a new way and you have to get more creative, which gets to my third point, live services. People are finally realizing that live services is really damn hard. And for every one winner in live services, there are 15 or 20 that don't make it through that transition because it's also a longer term bet. You have to be pledged to a forever game to make live services work. And a lot of folks just can't stomach that risk. But for everybody that can stomach that risk, you have a forever title. And what does that mean? We'll talk about that more in a second. Fourth, platforms are fragmenting more than ever before. If I'm a gamer today, if I want access to all of my content, I need to go across maybe 12 different storefronts. So I have to have all these different user IDs and maybe 5 different hardware devices. But we all only have the same 24 hours in every single day. So it's getting harder, more fragmentation, and a lot of these storefronts are saturated. And we'll talk more about what that looks like. And fifth, the capital and industry structure are indeed changing. What does that mean for an IDG when we're looking at market validation? What it means is that even the investors are becoming more scrutinizing and more disciplined when it comes to quantifying returns. Valuation multiples are contracting. And so a lot of times, the main ethos now is do no harm. How do we manage our downside risk? Not as exciting as let's try to boost this to the upside and see the chart go up and to the right. But we'll talk about what those implications mean for the industry. Because this market, if you look at all the headlines, it might feel like the sky is falling, and let's not sugarcoat it. For a lot of folks, they are feeling the pain. I have 200 resumes in my inbox right now of friends that have lost their jobs in the last 18 months. I've been able to help 40 of those friends find new jobs, but it's really hard, swimming upstream all the time. A lot of great talent on the sidelines, and hopefully some of those folks can land and create the next big IPs. Valuations also down in terms of multiple contraction, studio closures, legal, regulatory, and policy actions, and bad memory. What do I mean by that? RAM pricing is up 300% year over year. There's an AI chip shortage that's also sort of like a run on the bank when it comes to the supply chain. GPUs, CPUs, NVIDIA's involved in all of this. Talking to Taiwanese semi manufacturers and trying to get some edge there. And what we're finding is AI spending is making gaming more expensive. Data center build-outs have constrained the global supply of that computing hardware. And so one of the big exogenous effects of that is console pricing is now at historical highs. At a time where you're supposed to be mid-cycle for Gen 9, meaning for PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, we should be seeing significant discounts on the console hardware. But the economics don't foot that way because of the RAM issues, and you have tariffs. Even the Strait of Hormuz, that Iran war, I never thought that my international relations background from Stanford would apply here. And all of a sudden, I'm having to understand geopolitics with the Strait of Hormuz because it's lowered the shipments for PS5 through that strait into some of the disty territories that PlayStation thrives on as a second-order derivative market. So I'm having to learn new things and use different skill sets. And the idea here is it's getting very expensive for console, which means you have a generation of gamers for the first time, for me, I'm dating myself a little bit, console first, then PC, then mobile. I got 3 young kids at home. There's a high likelihood that the first games they're gonna play, and actually my oldest one, it's already happening for him, mobile first, then PC maybe, then console maybe, because consoles are getting too darn expensive. So when we look at the impacts demographically, it also ties in with the kind of content that folks are gonna resonate with over time. Because discoverability is also a big challenge right now. If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? If a great game is made, how can it cut through the clutter when you've got 20,000 new games on Steam every year? The number of games on Steam in the last 4 years has gone up by 4x. On console, 2x. On mobile, forget about it. 700,000 other mobile gaming apps that you're competing against. So there's a widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. That's something we've been correctly predicting for years. And what's interesting about all of this is that it's not winner take all, but what we're finding is it is winner take most. And if you are one of the winners, the ROI is outsized. And that's why we still do this. And hopefully we are also doing it because this is art we're creating. But from a P&L perspective, there is an outsized ROI, but it's getting harder to cut through the noise and become one of those winners. So we're gonna talk more in a bit about what that looks like. Finally, consolidation mania. We were correctly predicting this 5 years ago. In an increasingly fragmenting and maturing market, you're gonna see more publishers joining forces. You're gonna see strategics buying up smaller studios. You're gonna see some of those things. But now, with valuations contracting, sometimes the consolidation is more of a survival mechanism. With that being said though, Microsoft buying ABK for $70 billion a few years ago, or EA with their take private with the Saudi PIF fund, as well as Affinity and Silver Lake more recently at $55 billion. Gaming deals are still some of the biggest high valuation deals out there, but we're gonna probably see at least 1 or 2 more AAA top 10 publishers get bought in the next 12 to 18 months. Now, as an analyst, it's very important to find signals within all of this noise. So my friend Ed Helms here, very happy with our work. The nice thing here, though, is we don't hide. We don't just change our forecasts when it suits us to make us look better. We are always very clear with our rationales, our drivers, our inputs, our catalysts, our thesis points. And guess what? We screwed up on one. You see the yikes over there? Switch 2? And it's because we had a very different calculation on digital attach rates for that particular platform. The cool thing about all of it, though, is all of the console platforms use our work. So we have a great feedback loop and dialogue. But the nice thing with this visibility and transparency is that we don't hide behind our numbers. Instead, we show them, and we're very transparent so we can learn from our mistakes. Sometimes the biggest mistake that I've made as an analyst doing this for 22 years is assuming that companies will make rational decisions. And they don't always, because we're all humans at the end of the day, right? Even for me at IDG, I happen to be in the relationship business, and it just so happens that we are selling data, insights, market intelligence, and strategic advisory. But for all of us, we're humans, and sometimes we don't make rational decisions. And part of why this ties in here is a lot of folks think the sky is falling and the pain is real. Absolutely. On one hand, that is true. On the other hand, when you crunch the IDG data, there was a decline in 2022 of 3.4%. Then in 2023, down by around 0.2%. So at a top line level, we didn't see major declines, even though that's what it feels like right now. So on the one hand, the declines are not as exaggerated, but on the other hand, we are feeling real first order effects of all of the dislocations in the market. It's equanimity, guys. Both things can be true at the same time. Now, as we move forward, mobile gaming, top left, that's the workhorse right now. That drives about half of the market size. What's interesting about mobile, though, I touched on it earlier, 700,000 other games. The success rate on mobile is far lower than on console and PC. It just is. And so from that perspective, would you want to have 10 shots on goal with mobile or 1 or 2 good shots on goal on console and PC? It depends, but there are different ways of looking at this. For PC, this was the one platform that we correctly predicted would not decline coming out of COVID. And it's more single-digit, steady growth. Asia is still very strong. And in the West and also in Europe specifically, we're seeing very strong uptake still on Steam, but also with unified launcher games. And then finally, console. Even with the headwinds I touched on earlier with higher console pricing, better software is starting to come through the pipeline. You have Nintendo Switch 2 as a catalyst, and we are assuming a new PlayStation 6 sometime in the next 5 years, and a new Project Helix for Xbox, which we've been assuming for a while might be more of a hybrid PC console hardware platform. Because this is the money slide. At a macro level, even with all the pain that we're feeling in gaming today, it is still the #1 transmedia vertical. It is bigger than music and movies combined. And there are 2 big factors. When I think about gaming, when we all think about gaming, it's a lean forward format, right? It's engaging. Every time you play, it's a different experience. There's replayability there. And that ties in with recession resistance. 2008 financial crisis, COVID crisis, gaming actually showed massive growth. Whereas other entertainment verticals, you watch a movie, same ending every time unless you get the director's cut. And so by and large, the replayability value of gaming really holds up well, especially in tough macroeconomic environments like we're facing right now. Secondly, gaming is also an innovator when it comes to business models, right? So it's not just about content creation and art meeting technology, but it's also battle pass, season pass, event activations, user-generated content, content creator and influencer and live streaming ecosystems. Game publishers get very creative with business models because they're continually trying to redefine that virtual digital handshake with the consumer. And we're looking at a world now that's built on micro communities as a result. So this helps to explain why, even with gaming's headwinds, Hollywood and big tech are still enamored, whether you're looking at Disney, Netflix, Warner Brothers, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Meta to varying degrees when it comes to games. Because if you look at this very busy tapestry chart here, we update this every 6 months. A lot of the logos change pretty constantly, and then there are others that remain pretty constant. A few takeaways from this. One, there are some incumbents that have been here for 10 years, if not more, and will likely always be here. Second, the market is so fragmented right now that you have companies that in certain layers of this, they are directly and fiercely competing. And then in other areas, sometimes marriages of convenience, they have to partner together, and they become partners even though they're fiercely competing against each other in other parts of the games market. You also have game tech in the center of this circle that's becoming much bigger. We're one of the only analyst firms, I think we're the only one, that also forecasts game tech B2B. So you're talking about AWS for games, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, but we're also looking at audio and voiceovers and art services and XDevs and all those different areas. And so what we're finding is it's a very vibrant market, but if somebody came up to me today and said, hey, what does the competitive landscape look like? And who are our potential partners? The answer is yes. Sometimes your competitors could also be potential partners. We talked about lean forward a second ago. Gaming is growing entertainment engagement share. So make no mistake about it, there are some non-gaming competitors out there, especially for Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whether it be TikTok and short form video. For a lot of males today, it's crypto or iGaming. There are some other alternatives, but when it comes to gaming in a vacuum, entertainment engagement share is still going up rather than down. Another way we look at the total addressable market, monthly active users, PC and console. This is our proprietary IDG analytics platform, the most accurate platform in the entire games industry. We're within 5 to 8% margin of error accuracy at the title level. And what we're finding at the MAU level for Steam, PlayStation, Xbox combined, peak COVID, 600 million MAU. Today, hovering in a range between 800 million to 900 million MAU. You throw Nintendo Switch 1 and Switch 2 MAU in the mix, 80 to 95 million MAU, you're at almost a billion for MAU for console PC total addressable market. Then you have another 1.2 to 1.3 billion mobile gamers as well. So there are multiple billion players that you can address. There are some that are overlapping across, but even when you dedupe, you're probably looking at a 1.4 to 1.5 billion person market for games. I touched on business model innovation earlier. This was a really fun psychographic study we did. We did in-depth interviews with a wide variety of different game publishers and studios and platform holders, and we also did survey and focus group work with gamers to figure out what are the psychographic drivers for different business models? What part of your brain gets hit? What part of your amygdala gets hit if you're doing a loot box versus DLC? Oh, you're feeling FOMO for this type of business model, but here it's about competitive drive. Oh, maybe I'm a completionist in my gameplay. And so you're finding here virtual currency, virtual goods. Hollywood is often borrowing from the game companies when it comes to these different monetization loops. Because it's very important as we look forward here with Gen Z and Gen Alpha. They are the new vanguard. And these gamers are a very interesting cohort. For starters, they tend to be platform and genre omnivores. All that means is they play a wide spectrum of different games across different devices. And this is not just tied to specific parts of the world. In our proprietary IDG Gamer Gauge quantitative study, we do it once per year for Gen Z and Gen Alpha gamers. 43% of US gamers, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, play across console, PC, and mobile. Not either or, but and, not a typo. And if you look at places like Brazil and Germany, those omnivore rates are even higher. 55% for Brazil, and Germany at 45%. China's an outlier because console's just never gonna probably be a big platform over there. And while cross-platform gameplay is becoming more pervasive, some of the platform holders are beginning to open up their historical walled gardens. Xbox is certainly leading the way in that area, but we're also seeing some really interesting partnerships. Nintendo chose to work with Sony Pictures to distribute the Legend of Zelda movie as an example. And what we're finding is a lot of the most iconic IPs are becoming increasingly cross-platform over time. It's becoming more of the way of the world. So you can increase your TAMs, but also have that higher connectedness in community background. And on the topic of walled gardens, they are under threat even beyond console and PC. When we look at mobile today, you typically have that Google, Apple duopoly, but you now have D2C. A lot of mobile publishers are moving towards direct-to-consumer monetization. Stillfront, Playtika, SciPlay as examples there. And then you also have third-party payment hubs and top-up centers, Xsolla, CodaShop, Epic Game Store, AppCharge. So a lot of different alternative, One Store in Korea is another one. So there are a lot of different alternatives threatening that 30% share, a rev split that the Googles and the Apples of the world typically take. And it matters because IP loyalty today is much more resonant than device or platform loyalty. It used to be, I'm a PlayStation gamer, I'm an Xbox gamer, I'm a mobile gamer, I'm a PC gamer. Today, it's, I'm an Assassin's Creed gamer, I'm a Mortal Kombat gamer, I'm a COD gamer. Oh, I watched the newest season of Last of Us, and now I'm gonna go and pick up my dormant Last of Us 2 game on PS5 that I hadn't touched in 4 years. And we see this with gaming becoming a transmedia IP origination engine for the rest of Hollywood. There are so many of these IPs starting in gaming and have translated well to TV and movies. And some of them don't translate well. You know, there have been a few flops. But the idea is, part of what we're seeing here is that gaming IP is now often more evergreen and longer lasting than non-gaming IP. Mario Brothers, 36 or 37 years old now. Madden, I think 32 years old. League of Legends, 17 years old. Candy Crush, 15 or 16 years old. So we're seeing these forever brands continuing to show resiliency even in a tougher market. I touched on the Last of Us example. We have all the data here. So look at this telemetry, and what we're finding is a very high K-factor correlation when it comes to Last of Us when it streams on HBO Max, and then when people go back to the game, and vice versa. It's a nice little flywheel. And The Last of Us on the video game side, they haven't even done a new one in quite some time, right? We see the same thing with Fallout, and we even see it with some substandard IP. So for example, the Paramount Halo series is okay, but it does lead to an uptick in Halo game time whenever new episodes launch. Speaking of cultural touchstones and IP origination engines, Grand Theft Auto is this small little game that may or may not launch on November 19th. And for us at IDG, we think that in the near term, it could suck the oxygen out of the room for other competitors. Nobody wants to be in that window. But on the other hand, this is one of the true hardware sales drivers that we know are going to transcend a lot of the economic dislocations that we're also seeing in the market. With that being said, this is a game where they don't have to launch it right away because GTA 5, the predecessor, launched 13 years ago and is still acting like a game that's a top 10 hit that's frontline. GTA Online also monetizing and engaging extremely well. So this is another game that taps into this broader community set across a lot of different engagement and monetization loops, but it's also gonna likely be the biggest entertainment launch in history whenever it does release. And part of the GTA 6 success that we're forecasting is tied to strengthening the emerging markets. You've got LATAM, more mature, but very big market size, 6 billion by 2023, and then in the outer years is gonna get to 8 billion. Southeast Asia, it's gonna get to 6 billion. MENA, gonna get to 4.5 billion in the next 5 years. Turkey, 2 billion. India, almost 1 billion. India's been the laggard because it's one of the least monetizable regions in the world. But even there, we're starting to see the infrastructure ramp up and catch up with what gamer tastes are dictating. And the emerging market piece of the equation is important because cloud gaming could also become a big opportunity. We have yet to see full product market fit on cloud, but let's be honest, there are a lot of emerging territories that will likely never be console first, but there are still gamers that might want access to that type of AAA level console quality content. And cloud is often gonna be the only access point that certain gamers can get. And so from that perspective, we think this is a very interesting and intriguing market opportunity, although, once again, it's still very early days. Even though it's early days, cloud tech can unlock another 23% in device installed base. And it's not a surprise then that we see some of the companies that are going to be represented today, Amazon with Luna, Netflix, Xbox Cloud Gaming with Game Pass, PlayStation with PS Cloud Gaming, NVIDIA with GeForce Now. Heck, even Walmart has done a lot of dabblings in cloud gaming in the last few years. And so there's a reason why some of these big companies are moving into cloud. Another big growth unlock, indie and AA titles outpunching their weight class. Now, let's be real, there is some survivorship bias there. For every Helldivers 2 or Pal World or Clair Obscur 33, there are others that, pile up this really tough indie AA graveyard. But part of this is there are some benefactors when you follow the money. Kepler Interactive was behind some of the success of Sandfall Interactive and Slow Clap as an example. Tencent also involved with Arrowhead with Helldivers 2, and Sony was a part of that as well now that I think about it. But the idea here is some of the AAA folks are even asking us, should we make certain games that are not AAA? Should we do AA or single A? And what does that look like? Can we do what EA did with Hazelight with Split Fiction and It Takes Two? Or does it require a totally different type of org structure to accommodate that type of publishing and go-to-market success? The jury's still out, but that's one of the areas that we've been focusing on in our strategic advisory and consulting project work. UGC, another big area, user-generated content. This is a busy slide. Bottom right, Roblox, Fortnite, Rec Room, rest in peace to Rec Room. But a lot of these companies have built up a multi-billion-dollar market size. And then when you up-level one more step, gaming is a big part of this, but look, there's music and podcasts, there's live streaming, there's video, but gaming is one of the big fulcrum points within this ecosystem. Tying in with that is live streaming. And so what we're seeing there is Twitch, YouTube, local platforms such as Kick and Soup in Korea. These are platforms where a lot of Gen Z and Gen Alpha consumers, not even gamers, just consumers, are discovering digital content for the first time. A lot of folks are finding non-gaming content through what they talk about in their Discord chats, for example. So live streaming is becoming an interesting Trojan horse for content acquisition with Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And if you don't know how to do that, ask somebody. It's going to be one of the big disruptive areas moving forward, and you got to integrate that into your marketing plan. Finally here, AI. US gamers are still very reluctant about AI involvement in gaming. By contrast, you look at places like Brazil, China, and Germany, and they're much more favorable or open-minded about AI involvement in game content. Finally, let's nerd out and double down on that. Economics of game development and publishing, business of games. This is part of what I eat for breakfast every morning. These are just ranges, just illustrative ranges and directional ranges of what we see in the P&L. But you got to think about asset class, but the lines there are blurring. You got to think about where's the development taking place. Game modes, which platforms? Is it plat exclusive or multi-platform? And also, what are the genre makeup of that game and the gameplay features, hooks, monetization loops, etc. But also, we got to think about free-to-play and games as a service, or is it premium priced, or is it premium priced hybridized with games as a service post-launch mechanics like microtransactions, cosmetic functional items, DLC, the whole thing. So you got to think about all these different rubrics within your equation. And then game dev and marketing. On the marketing front, you got to think about distribution. Is it digital? Is it retail? Is it both? What does that look like? What does it mean? Third-party game engine, you got to pay a licensing fee there. So a lot of different factors that you got to think through. So we've built out tools that help publishers to do different scenario analyses around those different vectors. Mobile, really quick. Casual, still doing okay. Hyper-casual, a lot of those weaker hyper-casual developers got weeded out of the market over the last 4 years. Apple with IDFA policies, Chinese freeze on new game approvals, although that's been thawed since then. So hyper-casual is a tough business to be in today. Casual a little bit better, but once again, the survivorship bias on this is real. It's very difficult to be a hit. Mid-core and core, final 2 slides. Mid-core, this is an area where we're seeing user acquisition going up significantly. And same with core because of those discoverability challenges. And then finally, the economics of live streaming. Basically, left-hand side, viewer-driven revenue models. Right-hand side, streamer-driven revenue models. So Just to recap, I know I threw a lot of data, a lot of numbers at you guys, but if anybody wants to nerd out with me, I'll be here the rest of the show until Thursday. And the last thing I wanted to just share with you guys, I know that it's a tough time in our industry, but I'm also very optimistic. Like near term, I'm cautious, but long term, I'm optimistic because gaming has some of the most creative, enterprising minds, and we look out for each other. So for us at IDG, if there's anything we can do to support any of you, whether it's looking to land your next role or trying to just figure out what all of this disruption in the value chain, what it means for you now and also for your companies moving forward, let's have a conversation about it. We're here to support all of you. Thank you so much.